Hi, I'm Ian Small and I volunteer at Severndroog Castle on Shooters Hill in the Borough of Greenwich in South East London, and every day during the Severndroog Castle Online Festival I'll be telling stories about different aspects of Severndroog Castle, its past, its present and its future. And today I'm going to talk about the campaign to save the castle after it fell into decay and disuse. After Lady Anne James, the original owner, died, the castle changed hands several times before coming into public ownership in 1922 with the London County Council, along with the woods. The London County Council owned it until 1965, when it became the Greater London Council, and the Greater London Council was abolished in 1986 and its assets were passed to the individual London boroughs. Back in the 1920s and the LCC's time, there was a rather ugly dumbwaiter between the ground and first floor, and the room that we now call the Lady James room was occasionally used as a restaurant. A partial restoration was carried out in the 1920s, but after that very little work was done, and the intermediate rooms between the ground and the viewing platform were rarely opened, and the building, by the 1970s, the building was falling into disrepair. When it was handed over to Greenwich Council, in 1986, there was no budget to do anything with it. So it was boarded up, and during the next few years it suffered vandalism and graffiti, and thieves broke in and stole the lead off the roof, and it was left to rot until 2002, when the council decided it was going to try and lease it off to anybody that wanted to take it on. And that's when the campaign to save it really took off. Local residents had had a long history of campaigning for things. They'd already prevented the planners from driving a motorway through historic Oxley's Woods. A property development company was trying to negotiate a lease on the castle, and they had plans to use it as an office and make certain very inappropriate alterations to what is a listed building. And they also wanted to dig up the area around here that still contains English bluebell, a woodland plant which is now strongly in decline and a protected species, and install a car park. The campaigners managed to get the castle featured on a television programme in 2004 called Restoration. And this is a competition featuring heritage buildings, and viewers were asked to vote for whichever building they thought was worth saving. And although Severndroog didn't win the £1 million prize, its exposure on the media brought a new impetus to the campaign. Funds were raised to carry out a feasibility study with a view to putting forward a plan to restore it as a public asset. The property developer dropped out and the Heritage Lottery came to the rescue. After more than 10 years campaigning, work finally started to restore the building to its former glory in June of 2013. The work had to satisfy the conservation architects of Greenwich Council and English Heritage, because it's a Grade 2 building, listed building of historic and architectural importance. And once a detailed survey had been carried out, perhaps inevitably the work was more extensive than expected, both internally and externally. The work was carried out by a local company that specialises in restoring historic buildings, and it was supervised by an architect from Lewisham. The work cost £750,000, but 595,000 of that was funded by a grant from the Heritage Lottery Fund, and much of the rest was financed by certain other grants about historic buildings and obviously the money that had been raised by local people. And the castle reopened on the 24th of July 2014, attended by massive crowds of people. Since then, until COVID, it's always been busy, bringing thousands of visitors into this previously neglected and forgotten corner of Greenwich Borough. At the moment, sadly, the doors remain closed. The events I've talked about in other sessions are not happening. Those of us who've inherited the running of the castle from the people who campaigned so long and so hard to save it owe it to them to ensure it survives. At this difficult time, there are many calls from community groups and charities for funds and donations. And we do hope that people care enough to keep this amazing building open. It was built originally by a grieving widow in memory of a much-loved husband. We should not let the work of Lady Anne and all those years ago and the work of later campaigners be in vain. Thank you for listening to my talk.